Hello and welcome to the program. It's the last Friday of the month here in Korea, and I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Relations between the two Koreas got off to a pretty good start this year, with both countries willing to engage in high-level talks. But things turned cold when North Korea turned down South Korea's offer for talks, giving Seoul a set of preconditions. Our Connie Kim spoke to some experts to hear what they see in terms of inter-Korean talks in the coming months.
Since South Korea issued its proposal for inter-Korean talks in late December, the two Koreas have been unable to narrow their differences over a set of preconditions laid out by Pyongyang. Experts say that while the momentum for dialogue was lost this month, they're optimistic that talks could eventually resume. On the South Korean side, President Park Geun-hye wants to see progress in her trust-building process as she enters her third year in office. And North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, in his fourth year in power, wants to ease the economic hardship in the country by ending its diplomatic isolation. Experts also say, however, that both sides may have to wait until after a round of military drills between Korea and the U.S. scheduled for March, a halt to which was on Pyongyang's set of preconditions.
I would not expect any serious talks during the drills. Indeed, once it begins, everything will be frozen for a while. If nothing is heard until the beginning of these exercises, it means that the situation is likely to remain frozen. But, well, maybe even in this case there will be more contacts after the exercises end.
Others suggest the talks could occur before the drills.
The North will ramp up pressure on the South until mid-February before the drills, and is likely to propose inter-Korean military talks to discuss political and military issues.
The North's motive for sitting down for talks has been to break out of its diplomatic isolation. Kim Jong-un's expected trip to Russia in May to attend an anniversary event is seen as part of those efforts. There's also speculation Kim might head to Indonesia before that to attend the Bandung Conference of non-aligned Asian and African countries in April. Kim's grandfather and the regime's founder, Kim Il-sung, attended this event back in 1965, and the younger Kim has a track record of modeling himself after his grandfather. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Yesterday, we told you about former President Lee Myung-bak's shocking revelation of North Korea's offer for talks in exchange for aid. Today, the presidential office of Cheongwade called the revelation appalling. An anonymous Cheongwade official questioned how detailing accounts of past foreign affairs, including inter-Korean dialogue, would promote national interests. The official also said the current Park Geun-hye administration believes in transparency when carrying out its foreign policies. In his new book, former President Lee revealed that while he was in office, North Korea repeatedly demanded various forms of aid from the South in return for a leaders' summit and an apology for torpedoing a South Korean warship 5 years ago. There's no daylight between the North Korea policies of the U.S. and South Korea, according to a senior U.S. official. U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Wendy Sherman says Washington is just as committed to Pyongyang's denuclearization as Seoul is. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
U.S. Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman reiterated that the United States and South Korea share the same policy when it comes to North Korea. This as Washington has been ramping up pressure on Pyongyang amid Seoul's efforts to improve inter-Korean relations, raising concerns that the two allies were losing coordination.
We have the same policy as the Republic of Korea does, and that is to ultimately have a denuclearized peninsula. Denuclearization is the first priority where North Korea is concerned.
Following a vice minister's meeting in Seoul on Thursday, Sherman said all members of the six-party nuclear talks, aside from North Korea, are working together to see what more they can do to engage Pyongyang. The multilateral dialogue involving the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia, has been stalled for more than 6 years. Earlier this month, the U.S. rejected North Korea's offer to temporarily suspend nuclear tests in return for a halt in joint military drills between Seoul and Washington. It has been urging Pyongyang to take steps towards denuclearization before returning to talks, but Sherman declined to specify what those steps were.
North Korea needs to show concretely that is taking steps towards denuclearization. There are many ways to do that, and I support our special envoy in his efforts, and I'm not going to list specifics either.
Sherman reiterated that Washington supports President Park Geun-hye's initiatives for inter-Korean dialogue, saying that the U.S. looks forward to the day the peninsula is unified. South Korea was the second leg of her three-nation tour, which also included China and Japan. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
More people are using mobile phones in North Korea. The Seoul-based Korea International Trade Association released data on Friday showing that North Korea imported $82.8 million worth of mobile phones from China last year, nearly double the amount recorded in 2013. It's the highest since the association began tracking import volume in 2007. Recent reports say that there has been a boost in the demand for IT devices like smartphones in Pyongyang with the growth of the elite class after Kim Jong-un came to power. As of June last year, the number of mobile phone users stood at 2.4 million in the secluded state, or roughly 10% of the entire population. And yet another rocky year for Korea and Japan, and that's what some experts on East Asia are predicting, despite this year marking the 50th anniversary since the two countries established diplomatic ties. A poll by the U.S. Center for Strategic and International Studies found that 6 out of 10 experts expect Korea-Japan ties to remain frosty this year, and for cooperation between Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington to be sporadic. More than 20% said they think ties will actually worsen due to disputes over territorial and historical issues. A mere 11% believe the two countries' relations will improve to the degree where President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will hold their first summit. The survey was conducted on around 100 experts and scholars. Her approval ratings just keep on falling. Gallup Korea says just 29% of roughly 1,000 Koreans gave President Park Geun-hye good marks for how she's running the country. That's down a percentage point from a week earlier. It's the first time President Park's approval ratings have dropped into the 20% range since she took office nearly 2 years ago. 63% of respondents said they were not satisfied with the president. The most cited reasons included lack of communication, the controversial tax policy revisions, and the president's failed personnel picks. Korea's industrial output rose at its slowest pace ever last year as the domestic economy is still struggling to pick up a decent head of steam. Manufacturers' business sentiment also remains sluggish. Here's our Hwang Jae with more.
Korea posted the worst output growth last year. Statistics Korea says the country's output across all industries went up a mere 1.1% in 2014 from a year earlier. That marks the slowest pace of growth since the year 2000 when the agency started to compile related data. The agency attributed the sluggish growth to an overall downturn last year as the economy was hit hard by the Seoul ferry disaster and partial strikes in the auto industry. By sector, output in mining and manufacturing remained unchanged from the previous year, while service sector output rose 2.2%. Facility investment, however, jumped more than 4.5% on the back of strong investments in auto and machinery sectors. December's industrial output also rose almost 1% from a month ago after auto workers ended their strikes and factories normalized operations. Still, experts say it's hard to interpret last month's uptick as a recovery sign, as the improvement is largely because of a low base caused by the strikes. Such gloomy economic data is directly reflected in how businesses are seeing the economic conditions. The Bank of Korea says its manufacturers' business sentiment index for this month came in at 73, unchanged from a month earlier. A reading under 100 means pessimists outnumber optimists. Hwang Ji-yoon, ARIRANG News.
Well, duty-free shops at Korea's Incheon International Airport are doing a brisk business, thanks to Chinese tourists spending some big bucks there. Seeing an opportunity, Korean companies are vying for that slice of the pie. Our Kim Ji-yoon tells us more.
Businesses are in a bidding war to open a duty-free shop at Incheon International Airport. The 14 bidders this year include conglomerates such as Lotte, Silla, and Shinsegae, and smaller licensees like Donghua. Duty-free shops have seen their sales jump by an average of 10% a year over the past 5 years. The sales volume of the duty-free shops at the Incheon International Airport was among the largest worldwide. The shops at Incheon seem to have a bright future, largely thanks to the increase in the number of Chinese tourists visiting the country, as their spending comprises 35% of total sales at the shops. The airport was named the world's best duty-free shops in a business traveler survey of Chinese tourists in 2014. But the appeal of opening a shop at Incheon cannot be expressed in numbers only. Companies are using the know-how they gain at the airport to expand their business overseas. For example, Lotte reported sales of $3.8 billion last year at duty-free shops in airports and cities around the world, including Moscow's Sheremetyevo's Airport, Indonesia's Soekarno-Hatta, Japan's Kansai Airport, and in Guam. That's a six-fold increase from 2000. The Incheon International Airport Corporation says it will finalize which businesses win this year's round of bidding by February 18th. Kim Ji-yoon, ARIRANG News.
Fewer travelers are passing through Korea's main gateway than before. The Incheon International Airport Corporation said Friday that the number of passengers transferring at the airport dropped 6% last year to 7 million, which is about 460,000 less than in 2013. The company says a lower number of Chinese and Japanese passengers passing through Incheon on their way to other international destinations seems to have caused a decline. Chinese airline companies are now offering more non-stop flights to the U.S., and Tokyo's Haneda Airport also opened international routes to 13 new destinations, upping the total to 16. Incheon Airport authorities are concerned that this could put the airport a step behind in the race to become the hub for Northeast Asia. Korea's main stock exchange has been taken off the list of state institutions. With the delisting, the Korea Exchange will be able to implement an alternative trading system and pursue overseas operations in the future. The Finance Ministry says the Korea Exchange met the requirements to be delisted after fixing its lax management and cutting welfare benefits to employees by nearly 70%. The former Lee Myung-bak government put the Korea Exchange on the list of public institutions back in 2009, just 4 years after it was founded. Shifting our focus to a deadly attack in Egypt, a series of bombings targeting a military base in the town of Al-Arish in North Sinai killed at least 27 people, mostly soldiers. Egyptian officials say militants detonated a car bomb Thursday local time and fired mortar rounds at a hotel, police club, and several security checkpoints. Also, a flagship government newspaper said its Al-Arish office, located near the base, had been completely destroyed. The Islamic State's Egypt branch has claimed responsibility for the attack. An army major was also later shot dead at a checkpoint in the border town of Rafah. And the sunset deadline imposed by the latest purported Islamic State audio has come and gone with no prisoner swap. Jordan held back from releasing the Iraqi fighter as demanded by IS, saying it's still waiting for the group to meet its request.
Jordan requested a proof of life for the life of the Jordanian pilot, and we have not received that yet. We want to see a proof of life of the Jordanian pilot, and then we can talk about the exchange between Sajid al-Rishawi and the Jordanian pilot.
Separately, the spokesman also said Amman was working with Tokyo to secure the release of Japanese hostage Kenji Goto. Ahead of the deadline's expiry, the journalist's wife broke her silence to urge the two governments to save her husband and father of two young daughters, expressing concern that this latest ultimatum could be the last. So far, there has been no response from the extremist group that had threatened to immediately kill the young Jordanian pilot hostage if Amman did not release the Iraqi female fighter by sunset Thursday. Now, for those of you planning to go on a trip to an urban area anytime soon, this new report called the Safe Cities Index is something you might want to keep an eye on. Topping the list as the safest city in the world is Japan's Tokyo. UK-based think tank Economist Intelligence Unit selected 50 cities from around the world and analyzed them based on 4 criteria: digital security, health security, infrastructure safety, and personal safety. Asian cities like Singapore and Osaka and European cities like Stockholm and Zurich took up some of the other top spots. Meanwhile, Korea's Seoul ranked 24th on the list. Safety should always come first, and the Korean government is trying to live by that by educating more young people on public safety. It's planning to strengthen student safety education programs and offer more hands-on training. And our Park Ji-won reports from the city of Taebaek, where one of Korea's biggest safety training centers is located.
Since last year's tragic ferry disaster that claimed hundreds of innocent young lives, people have pointed to the lack of public safety education in Korea. In response, the nation's education ministry is aiming to strengthen public safety education for students.
The nation grieved over the Seoul ferry tragedy. Life and safety are top priorities for the Park Geun-hye administration, and we aim to give students public safety education to prevent such a tragedy from recurring.
Although the current law stipulates that students undergo 44 hours of public safety education per year, only 6 of those hours are related to disaster prevention. And most of the time is spent in lectures with few opportunities for hands-on training. So on Thursday, the education minister paid a visit to Korea's largest public safety education center located in Taebaek, Gangwon-do province to take a tour. The facility, called 365 Safe Town, provides hands-on training from life-saving techniques to 3-dimensional disaster simulations. The ministry is considering establishing MOUs with safety awareness facilities such as this to provide kids with public safety education that's both fun and effective.
More than ever, we need to raise awareness about public safety among students. We will introduce policies so that public safety awareness facilities like this can be part of students' education.
This month, the Education Ministry will also designate 51 schools nationwide as locations for a pilot program for public safety. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News, Taebaek.
And the Australian Embassy here in Seoul celebrated the country's biggest holiday called Australia Day with a special event filled with food and culture. Our Connie Lee takes us there.
Fresh, plump cherries, mangoes as large as your face, and deep red wine. These are just a few of the things that are here in Korea, straight from Australia. Celebrating Australia Day under the theme of Showcasing Australia, the nation's embassy in Seoul held a gala event to highlight all the things the nation has to offer to Korea as a key trade and investment partner. With the Korea-Australia Free Trade Agreement in full effect since December 2014, there are certain items from the land down under that are now cheaper here in Seoul. For instance, these cherries. The removal of the 24% tariff has made these fruits much more affordable to Korean consumers. Likewise for Australian wine.
I'm a lover of wine. It's a personal interest of mine. So I think with the tariff on wine coming down with the free trade agreement, I hope to see more range of choice of Australian wine in the market.
The Australian ambassador adds that he wants to stimulate new areas of trade this year and maintain his country's strong defense relationship with Korea.
We put a big emphasis on our defence relationship. Australia is very much an Asia-Pacific country, so peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula is central to our economic health.
The event also included a special performance by Korean-Australian pop singer Connie Kim, the 2013 winner of the singing show X Factor Australia.
I do want to come back to Korea this year, and if I get the opportunity, I want to do my own concert and, actually get to meet my fans and spend a bit more time here.
Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Let's talk some soccer. South Korea and Australia will go head-to-head on Saturday in Sydney in a battle to win the Asian Cup title. Korea has already beaten Australia in the tournament and has a perfect defensive record. But the Korean team will have to cope with tens of thousands of Aussies cheering their country on. Our S.J. Lee gives us a preview of the big match.
5 matches, 5 wins, and not a single goal conceded. Expectations weren't high at the start, but now the South Korean national football team is on the brink of winning its first Asian Cup title in 55 years. But with Australia playing in front of their home crowd, it won't be an easy task, as the Socceroos are looking to win their first ever Asian Cup title. It's a battle between the tournament's best defensive team in Korea, who have yet to give up a single goal, and an Australian team that have scored the most goals with 12, with 10 different players finding the back of the net. And while the Taeguk Warriors beat the Socceroos 1-0 in their opening group stage match, most analysts expect the home team will push forward aggressively and try to break through the South Korean defense early on. The final carries extra weight as the winner also qualifies for the 2017 Confederation Cup in Russia. The Asian Cup final between South Korea and Australia kicks off in Sydney on Saturday at 6 p.m. Korea time. S.J. Lee, ARIRANG News.
Welcome back. I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. We are already near the end of January, and today's temperatures are at the seasonal average. However, we can expect strong winds to blow nationwide and twice as strong as normal here in these areas where it's blue now. And because of the strong winds and partly cloudy skies, we won't be seeing much of an increase in the daytime high. Temperatures are expected to drop drastically throughout the night, so we'll be expecting a sudden cool snap on Saturday morning. But don't worry, the afternoon is expected to turn mild, as will the rest of our weekend. Now let's take a closer look at the readings for today. So we'll be lingering up to 2 this afternoon, while the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will be reaching up to 3 and 8 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 6, Dokdo hits 4, while Namgungang drops cold to -9 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
All right, thanks, Michelle, for that. For those of you here in Korea, brace yourself for that cold weather if you're planning to go outside today. That'll do it from me for now, but I'll be back with Daniel at 6 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.